The sun was shining brightly that afternoon, and the air carried a soft warmth that made everything feel calm and alive. Liam, a 12-year-old boy, pedaled his old, slightly rusty bicycle along the quiet streets of his neighborhood. He loved these moments when no one was around to bother him, when he could focus only on himself and the gentle sound of his bike wheels rolling over the pavement. It was his favorite time of day, a small escape from the usual challenges he faced at school, and with other kids who didn't always treat him kindly. Liam was a little heavier than the other kids his age. He knew it, and he had learned over time to feel self-conscious about it. Most of the time he tried to stay invisible, avoiding attention whenever he could, but today was different. He had been watching videos online about tricks and stunts that kids his age were learning on bikes, and he felt a spark of determination. He wanted to try something new just for himself to prove that he could do it. Even if it didn't work perfectly, it would still be his small victory. As he pedaled through the familiar streets, he could feel his heart beating faster, partly from excitement and partly from nerves. Every so often, he glanced at his reflection in the windows of the houses as he passed, just to check how he looked while moving. His hair was a little messy from the breeze, and sweat had begun forming on his forehead, but he didn't mind. These moments were his, a rare chance to forget the teasing words he often heard at school or on the playground. Meanwhile, a group of bikers was riding down the same street, their engines rumbling loudly, disturbing the quiet afternoon. They were a mix of middle-aged men and younger adults, all wearing leather jackets and riding big, shiny motorcycles that gleamed in the sunlight. They laughed and shouted among themselves, enjoying the feeling of freedom that came with the wind on their faces and the roar of the engines. One of the bikers, a tall man with a scruffy beard and a leather jacket with patches all over it, noticed Liam struggling to balance his bike as he tried a simple trick. The man's eyes narrowed slightly and he let out a loud laugh. He didn't even know Liam's name, but that didn't matter. In his mind, this was an opportunity to have a little fun at someone else's expense. "Hey, look at the little tub of trouble," the biker shouted, pointing at Liam and laughing. "What are you doing on that tiny bike, kid? Are you gonna fall again?" Liam's face turned red instantly. He had expected some difficulty from trying the new trick, but he had never expected anyone to actually mock him so openly. The laughter of the biker made his stomach tighten, and for a moment he froze. His hands gripped the handlebars a little too tightly, and the bike wobbled dangerously. His first instinct was to pedal faster and get away, to disappear from this sudden spotlight of humiliation. But the street was narrow, and the biker's friends had begun circling around, laughing and pointing. The teasing grew louder, and Liam felt the familiar sting of shame and embarrassment. He wanted to cry, but he didn't. Not here, not now. Instead, he pedaled harder, trying to keep control of his bike while the biker's laughter echoed in his ears. From a short distance, someone was watching the scene unfold quietly. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson happened to be in town for a film shoot, and he had taken a casual walk to enjoy the neighborhood. He was unrecognizable to most people in his casual clothes, just another man enjoying the sunshine. But his sharp eyes noticed everything: the wobbling bike, the laughter of the biker, and most importantly, the tense look on Liam's face. Dwayne had seen bullying before, both in his own life and in the stories of others. He knew how quickly words could cut deeper than a physical blow, how a simple insult could linger in someone's mind for days or weeks. He didn't rush in immediately. Instead, he stayed at a distance, observing, waiting for the right moment to act. He wanted to handle it in a way that would make a real impact, not just scare the biker off. Liam, unaware that someone was watching, tried to focus on the trick he was practicing. He had been working on balancing on one wheel for a few seconds, something he had been failing at repeatedly at home. Now, under the harsh glare of the biker's attention, it seemed almost impossible. He felt the weight of embarrassment pressing down on him, heavier than his own body had ever felt. Each wobble of the bike felt like a reminder of every time someone had laughed at him in school. The biker, noticing Liam's hesitation, leaned closer and shouted even more loudly. "Come on, kid. You're gonna break that bike before you even get anywhere. Maybe you should just stick to video games, huh?" Liam's heart sank. He wanted to answer back, to defend himself, but the words got stuck in his throat. His eyes watered, not from the sun, but from the frustration and humiliation he felt. He pedaled faster, desperately trying to escape the mocking tone. But the narrow street left him with no easy exit. Dwayne continued to watch, his expression calm but firm. He could feel the anger rising inside him, not at Liam, but at the biker. He knew that confronting the man directly would be necessary soon, but he also knew it had to be done in a way that would teach a lesson, not just intimidate. He kept his steps light and silent, moving closer without drawing attention to himself. The small crowd that had gathered began to murmur quietly. Some of them shook their heads at the biker's behavior, while others seemed unsure whether to intervene. Liam felt a flicker of hope seeing some sympathetic faces, but the embarrassment still weighed heavily on him. He wanted to disappear, to be anywhere but here, riding a bike under the mocking eyes of someone who didn't care about him at all. Despite everything, Liam refused to give up. He remembered the videos he had watched online, how the kids on the screen had practiced again and again, failing many times before getting it right. He took a deep breath, adjusting his grip on the handlebars, and tried the trick again. His legs trembled with the effort, and for a few shaky seconds he almost lost balance, but he kept going. That small moment of perseverance, though barely noticeable, was a victory in itself. The biker, seeing Liam try again, laughed even louder. But there was something different in Dwayne's gaze. He had stepped closer now, his presence radiating a calm authority that made people take notice. The biker, caught up in his own mockery, didn't see the tall man walking toward him until it was almost too late. The sound of the approaching steps made the biker glance around, his confident smirk faltering slightly. Liam, still focused on his bike, didn't notice the change at first. He was too busy trying to balance, pedaling carefully and not falling, but he did sense the energy around him shifting. Like the tension in the air had thickened. Something was about to happen, though he didn't know what. For Dwayne, it wasn't just about stopping the biker. It was about showing Liam that he wasn't alone, that there were people who believed in standing up for what was right. He didn't need to shout or make threats. His presence, his calm authority was enough to change the dynamic of the situation, and so the quiet observer finally moved into position, ready to intervene, but not just with words. He was ready to make sure that this ordinary afternoon, which had begun with humiliation and fear, could turn into a lesson in courage, respect, and hope for a young boy who had only wanted to ride his bike in peace. The biker didn't stop. If anything, he seemed to grow bolder as he saw Liam struggle with his bike. His laughter was louder now, echoing down the quiet street. He leaned back on his motorcycle, spinning the throttle just enough to make a small roar, enjoying the attention his behavior was getting. He called out more insults, his voice dripping with mockery. "What's the matter, kid? Losing your balance again? Maybe you should just quit now before you embarrass yourself even more." Liam's face burned red, not just from the heat of the sun, but from humiliation. His hands were slick with sweat as he gripped the handlebars, trying to steady his wobbling bike. For a moment, he thought about giving up and running home. He could already imagine the biker's laughter fading behind him, leaving only the sting of the words in his mind. But something inside him wouldn't let him quit. He had worked hard learning these tricks, practicing in the backyard and watching videos online. He had dreamed of riding down this street without fear, and he didn't want to let anyone take that from him, not even this biker. The small crowd that had begun to gather along the sidewalk watched in uneasy silence. Some shook their heads at the biker's behavior, clearly disapproving, but no one moved to step in. It was the kind of situation people usually ignored, telling themselves it wasn't their problem. But that didn't make it any less painful to witness. Liam's struggle, his determination to continue despite the mocking words, was clear to anyone paying attention. From a short distance away, Dwayne Johnson watched the scene unfold with a mixture of concern and calm calculation. He had dealt with bullies before, both in his own life and through stories he had heard from countless fans. He knew that confronting someone like this required more than just anger. It required strategy. Dwayne stayed silent, moving closer quietly, making sure not to draw immediate attention but ready to step in when the time was right. The biker seemed oblivious to the presence of anyone else. His focus was entirely on Liam, whose every attempt to balance or ride straight seemed to amuse him further. "Come on, you call that riding? My grandma rides better than you," the biker shouted. He laughed so loudly that it almost drowned out the hum of his engine. Liam's hands shook slightly, and he wobbled dangerously, the bike tipping slightly to one side before he corrected himself. Liam's stomach tightened. He could feel his chest rise and fall quickly, his heart racing. He hated feeling this small, this weak, this powerless in front of someone who didn't even know him. He remembered other times at school when kids laughed at him, when teachers seemed too busy to notice, when friends drifted away because of his weight. But today he had hoped for something different. Today was supposed to be his moment. Riding his bike was supposed to be fun. Now it felt like every pedal forward carried the weight of everyone else's judgment. And then something shifted. Dwayne had gotten closer, positioning himself so that the biker would notice him soon without startling anyone. He could feel the energy around him change. The biker was still laughing, but there was a subtle shift in the air, a tension that even Liam sensed, though he couldn't explain why. Something big was about to happen, and Liam's nerves began to spike even higher. The biker, feeling unstoppable, continued with his insults. "Seriously, kid, you're making this look pathetic. You should just stay home and eat a sandwich or two." His friends around him laughed, joining in the chorus. The combined sound was overwhelming, a mixture of engines, laughter, and shouting. Liam's vision blurred for a moment, not from the sun but from frustration and fear. He could barely concentrate on the simple task of pedaling in a straight line. But Liam didn't quit. He had learned resilience in small ways, over months and years of facing challenges both big and small. He had learned that fear was not the absence of courage but the presence of it. His fingers tightened around the handlebars, and with a deep breath he tried again, pushing past the embarrassment. For a brief moment he managed to ride straighter, pedaling with a little more confidence. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Seeing this, Dwayne felt a small surge of admiration. He had seen countless people give up in the face of mockery. But Liam's persistence was something different. It wasn't just about riding a bike, it was about standing up in his own way, refusing to let someone else's words control him. Dwayne knew he had to act soon, not to rescue Liam in the traditional sense, but to make sure the lesson the biker was teaching stopped immediately. The biker, noticing Liam's attempt to regain balance, smirked and revved his engine louder. "Oh, look at that." Trying again. "Pathetic." He laughed so hard that his friends joined in, echoing the insults. The sound felt like a wall closing in on Liam. He pedaled faster, trying to escape, but the street was narrow and the biker's motorcycle blocked one side. Panic bubbled up inside him, threatening to spill over into tears or a crash. At that moment, a calm but commanding voice cut through the noise. "Hey, that's enough." The biker paused mid-laugh. He turned, scanning the street, and saw Dwayne walking toward him. The rock's presence was immediate and unmistakable. He didn't shout or make any aggressive move, but the sheer confidence and size of the man approaching made the biker stop in his tracks. His smirk faltered. The biker's friends, too, fell silent, sensing that something serious was about to happen. Liam, still pedaling carefully, turned slightly and saw the new arrival. His heart leapt, not from fear this time, but from hope. He didn't know who the man was, but there was a sense of safety in his approach. The man's eyes were focused, not with anger, but with a quiet authority that made the biker seem suddenly small and unsure. Dwayne didn't need to shout to make his point. He took slow, deliberate steps toward the biker, making sure his presence was clear. "Mocking someone for their appearance is unacceptable," he said, his voice calm but firm. The biker's face changed from amusement to embarrassment, his earlier confidence replaced with unease. The crowd watched, sensing that the biker's behavior was about to be addressed in a way they hadn't expected. Liam's hands loosened slightly on the handlebars, and he stopped pedaling for a moment, just watching. Relief washed over him, stronger than he had felt in months. Someone was here to stand up for him, not by making him feel small, but by setting things right in a calm, controlled way. He felt a little spark of courage ignite inside him, a small but powerful sense that he wasn't invisible, that he mattered. The biker opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out immediately. He glanced at Dwayne, then at the gathering crowd, and finally at Liam. The laughter that had been so easy moments ago seemed hollow now, replaced with a growing awareness of being watched and judged, not just by Dwayne, but by the people around him who had come to witness the scene. For Liam, that moment felt like a turning point. Even though he hadn't done anything physical to fight back, he realized that courage could take many forms. Simply continuing to ride, simply existing in the face of mockery was a kind of victory. And now, with someone else stepping in to ensure fairness, he began to see that there were people willing to stand up for what was right, even for a stranger. Dwayne's approach was careful and intentional. He wanted the lesson to reach both Liam and the biker. His words were measured, focusing on respect and empathy rather than fear. "Everyone deserves to feel safe and respected," he said. "No one should have to deal with someone mocking them for who they are. It's not right, and it ends now." The biker, caught off guard and realizing the situation had shifted dramatically, muttered something under his breath, barely audible. His laughter was gone, replaced by the first hint of guilt he had felt in years. His friends looked at him, unsure of how to react, realizing that this wasn't the light-hearted teasing they had expected. Liam, still on his bike, felt a new energy within him. He took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and pedaled a little further down the street, regaining confidence in his movements. The fear and embarrassment were still there, but now they were mixed with something new: pride, hope, and the belief that he could continue despite challenges. Dwayne stayed close, watching both the biker and Liam carefully. He didn't need to say much more. His presence alone was enough to shift the balance. The biker seemed to shrink a little, realizing that mocking someone else wasn't a joke when someone who truly understood respect was watching. And in that moment, the ordinary afternoon began to change. What had started as a scene of humiliation and fear for a young boy was slowly transforming into a lesson about courage, empathy, and the power of standing up for what is right. Liam had survived the mockery not by confrontation but by persistence and quiet bravery. And the biker, whether he realized it or not, was about to learn an equally important lesson about respect and humanity. The biker froze as Dwayne Johnson approached. There was something about the man that immediately commanded attention. He didn't shout, he didn't raise his fists, but the way he carried himself made the biker suddenly feel small and unsure. The laughter that had been so loud moments ago faded, replaced by silence and the soft murmur of the crowd gathering around. People started to watch closely, sensing that this was no ordinary street confrontation. Liam, still gripping his bike, could hardly believe his eyes. The tension that had been suffocating him just moments ago seemed to lift slightly. It was strange and comforting to see someone step in without anger or aggression, someone who made him feel safe without even touching him. He pedaled a little further away from the biker, still keeping his eyes on Dwayne, wondering what would happen next. Dwayne stopped a few feet away from the biker and looked directly at him. His voice was calm, deep and firm. "Enough. This ends now." There was no shouting, no threat, only a quiet authority that made the biker swallow hard. He could feel the eyes of everyone around him, the kids, the neighbors, and now this man who seemed larger than life, all watching and waiting for his next move. The biker's friends shifted uncomfortably. They had expected to have a little fun, to laugh and make the boy feel small, but now the situation had changed. The sense of power they thought they had was gone. Dwayne's calm presence was stronger than any roar of engines or shouting insults. It wasn't just physical, it was a moral strength, and it made everyone else around recognize who was right and who was wrong. "You don't get to make someone feel small for no reason," Dwayne continued, his voice steady, but not mean. "No one deserves to be mocked for who they are, for how they look, or for anything about themselves that they can't control." "It stops here." The biker opened his mouth to reply, but no words came. His smirk had disappeared, replaced by a mix of confusion, guilt, and embarrassment. He had not expected to be confronted like this, and certainly not by someone who seemed so calm, yet so undeniably strong. His friends looked at him, unsure whether to speak up or stay silent, realizing that their laughter from moments ago had become awkward and misplaced. Liam's heart was still racing, but now for a different reason. He felt a spark of hope and relief. For the first time in a long time, he realized that he wasn't powerless. Someone believed in standing up for what was right, and that gave him courage. He felt a surge of pride in himself for continuing to ride his bike, for not giving up even when it had felt impossible. Dwayne turned slightly and looked at Liam, kneeling down to bring himself closer to the boy's level without crouching too much. "Hey," he said softly, smiling. "You're doing great. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're less than you are. What you're doing takes courage, and I see it." Liam blinked, a mixture of surprise and relief washing over him. He had never been praised like this before, certainly not in the middle of such a tense moment. His fingers loosened a little on the handlebars, and he took a deep breath. For the first time that day, he felt a small sense of calm. Someone had his back, and that changed everything. The biker, still standing in front of Dwayne, shifted awkwardly. He looked at Liam, who was now pedaling a little more confidently, and finally muttered, I didn't mean. Dwayne raised a hand to stop him. It's not about what you meant, he said firmly. It's about what you did. Making fun of someone else is never okay. You need to understand that and take responsibility for it. The biker's shoulders slumped. For the first time, he seemed genuinely aware of how wrong his behavior had been. The laughter that had come so easily before was gone, replaced with an uncomfortable silence. He nodded slowly as if trying to absorb the weight of the lesson. His friends didn't say anything. They simply watched, realizing that this wasn't just about a kid on a bike. It was about respect, empathy, and understanding the impact of their actions. Liam, encouraged by Dwayne's words, decided to try the trick again. He adjusted his grip on the handlebars, took a deep breath, and pedaled forward with careful focus. This time he managed to keep the bike steady for a few seconds longer, a small but important victory. He looked up briefly at Dwayne, who gave him a thumbs up and a warm smile. Liam's heart swelled with pride. Dwayne turned back to the biker. Look, he said calmly but firmly, you have a choice here. You can continue to act like this and keep hurting others, or you can start making better choices. It's not too late to change. The biker's gaze dropped to the ground. He felt the weight of Dwayne's words pressing on him. He had mocked someone smaller, weaker, and he now realized that his actions had consequences. The laughter, the insults, it was all easy in the moment. But the embarrassment, the realization, and the moral lesson would stay with him much longer. The small crowd that had gathered seemed to sense the shift in energy. People whispered to each other, some nodding in approval of Dwayne's calm handling of the situation. Others exchanged glances, inspired by the way someone had stepped in without aggression, showing strength and empathy rather than intimidation. Liam, still riding his bike carefully, felt a sense of empowerment. He had faced ridicule and didn't break. He had continued despite the fear and embarrassment. And now someone had stood beside him, giving him a voice and showing the biker that what he had done was not acceptable. It was a lesson in courage, not just for Liam, but for everyone watching. Dwayne knelt slightly, bringing himself even closer to Liam's level. Remember this, he said gently. Courage isn't about fighting or shouting. Courage is about standing tall even when you're scared. Courage is about being kind and strong at the same time, and you're showing that right now. Liam's chest swelled. He felt a mixture of pride and relief. For the first time, he understood that strength wasn't about how much he could lift or how fast he could pedal. It was about how he faced challenges, how he treated himself, and how he responded to others. The biker, now fully quiet, seemed to reflect on what had just happened. His friends shuffled awkwardly, and the roar of the motorcycles had faded into the background. Dwayne's presence had shifted the dynamic completely. What had started as a moment of humiliation for a young boy was now turning into a lesson in responsibility for a grown man. Liam pedaled a little further, still keeping his balance. He felt a smile creeping onto his face, a small but significant moment of triumph. He had faced a bully, not with fists or anger, but with perseverance, and now he had someone standing beside him, ensuring that justice and respect were upheld. Dwayne watched the boy, then looked back at the biker. You can do better, he said. We all can, but it starts with paying attention to how we treat others. Every word matters. Every action matters. The biker nodded, finally speaking in a low voice. I get it. I didn't think about it like that. There was a small sincerity in his voice, a glimpse of understanding. It wasn't perfect, and it might take time for him to fully change, but the first step had been taken. Liam felt a wave of relief and happiness. He had faced the worst of the mocking and come out stronger. He had learned that standing tall didn't always mean fighting back. It could mean continuing forward, staying calm and allowing others to help make things right. As the crowd began to disperse, the tension in the street lifted. The bikers started their engines quietly, now subdued, and moved away. Liam continued riding his bike slowly, enjoying the feeling of freedom that came not just from movement, but from a sense of safety, encouragement, and the lesson he had just learned. Dwayne stood back, watching him go. He knew this was just the beginning for Liam. The boy had learned a powerful lesson about courage, perseverance, and self-worth. And the biker, now aware of the impact of his actions, had been given a chance to reflect and start making better choices. It was a small moment, but moments like these could change lives. For Liam, it was a turning point. A day that had begun with fear and humiliation ended with hope and inspiration. He felt stronger, braver and more confident than he had in a long time. And he knew that no matter what challenges came next, he had the courage to face them head-on. The street slowly returned to its usual quiet, but the energy from what had just happened lingered in the air. Liam, still gripping his bicycle, felt a mixture of relief, pride, and a little disbelief. He had faced someone mocking him openly, and for the first time he hadn't felt completely powerless. Instead, he had experienced something he never thought possible. Support from someone he didn't even know. Someone who had stood up for him with calm authority rather than anger or shouting. Dwayne Johnson stayed for a few more moments, ensuring the situation was fully under control. He noticed the biker standing off to the side, quiet and reflective, no longer brash or loud. The man's friends had already mounted their motorcycles, casting occasional glances back, still unsure about what had just happened. The air was heavy with thoughtfulness now instead of tension. "Hey," Dwayne said, speaking gently but firmly to Liam. "You did something important today. You didn't let fear stop you. You didn't let someone else's words control you. That takes real courage. Always remember that." Liam's face lit up with a small, shy smile. He had never been told something like this before. At school, people mostly laughed or ignored him. He had learned to brush off the teasing and insults on his own, but hearing it from someone like Dwayne made it feel real, meaningful, and inspiring. He nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest that he couldn't explain. For a moment, he forgot all the embarrassment he had felt earlier. Dwayne turned slightly toward the biker. "And you," he said, his voice steady, "have a choice to make. You can continue mocking others, or you can reflect on your actions and choose to do better. It's not about punishment, it's about understanding the impact of what you do." The biker avoided eye contact at first, but then slowly looked up. There was a change in him, subtle but visible. The confident, loud demeanor that had dominated the street just moments ago was gone. Now there was hesitation, a small but growing awareness of how badly he had treated someone. I didn't think it was that serious," he muttered, his voice low. I guess I was just trying to joke around." Dwayne nodded, not judging, just observing. Making fun of someone for their weight or anything they can't control isn't a joke. It can hurt deeply. You need to understand that, and I hope you do. The biker stayed silent for a moment, as if the words were sinking in. Around them, the small crowd that had gathered also seemed quieter, many of them nodding in approval at Dwayne's calm handling of the situation. It wasn't about anger or aggression. It was about teaching a lesson in respect, responsibility, and empathy. Meanwhile, Liam's confidence grew with every passing second. He pedaled slowly in small circles, regaining control and enjoying the simple act of riding. His focus wasn't on the biker anymore. It was on himself, on proving to himself that he could continue despite fear, embarrassment, and ridicule. For the first time, he felt that sense of independence he had always wanted, a feeling that he could face challenges without being defined by the opinions of others. Dwayne crouched slightly to Liam's level, speaking directly to him again. "You know, real strength isn't just about how fast you can pedal or how many tricks you can do. Real strength is about how you handle tough situations, how you respond when someone tries to bring you down. You've shown that today. Don't forget it." Liam's eyes widened slightly, absorbing the words. He felt a new kind of power rising inside him, not physical strength but self-confidence and resilience. For the first time, he believed that he could face challenges and setbacks without being completely crushed by them. It was a feeling that made his chest swell with pride. The biker, now fully quiet, seemed to be reflecting deeply. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, a subtle sign of discomfort. He had thought of this encounter as just a little joke, a way to pass the time and amuse himself, but the reality of what he had done and how it had affected someone was sinking in. There was no more laughter, no more smirks, only awareness. And that awareness was the first step toward change. Dwayne gave Liam a nod of encouragement, then turned his attention back to the biker. "Every action has a consequence," he said, his tone calm but firm. "Every word you speak matters. Today you saw firsthand how powerful words can be. Think about that." The biker swallowed hard. He could feel a small knot of guilt forming in his stomach. For the first time, he truly understood that his words weren't harmless. They had weight, they could hurt, and they could leave a mark that didn't go away easily. He nodded slowly, as if promising himself to think before speaking in the future. Around them, the neighborhood began to return to normal. People who had stopped to watch started moving again, talking quietly about what they had seen. Some praised Dwayne for his calm, effective intervention. Others looked at Liam with newfound respect. It was clear to everyone that the young boy had faced something difficult and come through it with courage, aided by the guidance and presence of someone who believed in him. Liam decided to practice one more trick. His confidence had grown with each pedal forward, and he felt a quiet determination to prove to himself, not to anyone else, that he could do it. He pedaled carefully, took a deep breath, and managed to balance for a few more seconds than before. It wasn't perfect, but it was a victory. He looked up at Dwayne, who gave him a thumbs up and a warm smile, and for the first time Liam laughed. The sound was light and free, a small celebration of his courage and persistence. Dwayne looked at the biker one last time. "You've been given a chance today," he said. "Think about it. How you treat others matters more than you realize, and it's never too late to start doing better." The biker nodded again quietly. He didn't speak much, but there was a sense of understanding in his eyes that hadn't been there before. His friends glanced at him, still unsure how to react, but it was clear that the energy on the street had shifted completely. The lesson had been delivered, not through anger or confrontation, but through calm, firm, and thoughtful action. Liam's heart was still racing, but now it was a mixture of excitement and relief. He felt empowered, knowing that he had faced a challenge and grown from it. The shame that had been so heavy on his shoulders was replaced by pride, and the fear that had threatened to stop him in his tracks was now mixed with confidence. He realized that courage wasn't about being fearless, it was about continuing forward, even when fear was present. The biker slowly mounted his motorcycle, now quieter and more thoughtful than before. He started the engine, but the loud roar that had been so dominant earlier was subdued. He drove off slowly, as if carrying with him the weight of a lesson he couldn't forget. His friends followed, and soon the street returned to its usual quiet, the only sounds being the faint hum of passing cars and the chirping of birds. Liam pedaled for a few more minutes, savoring the freedom and control he felt. He experimented with small tricks, each success giving him a little more confidence. The sense of achievement was immense. What had begun as a humiliating moment had turned into a powerful life lesson, one that he would carry with him for a long time. Dwayne stayed with him for a while longer, talking quietly about courage, perseverance, and the importance of self-respect. He reminded Liam that people will sometimes say or do hurtful things, but the way we respond to those challenges defines who we are. Liam listened intently, absorbing every word, feeling more and more empowered with each passing moment. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the street, Liam finally stopped his bike. He felt a quiet satisfaction and peace. He had faced humiliation, fear, and mockery and come out stronger. He had learned lessons about courage, kindness, and self-respect that would stay with him forever. Dwayne smiled at him one last time. "Remember today," he said. "You have the strength inside you to face challenges. Keep going and don't let anyone take that away." Liam nodded, a small but determined smile on his face. He had learned more than just how to ride a bike better. He had learned how to stand tall in the face of adversity, how to trust in his own courage, and how to recognize the importance of kindness and respect in the world. And as he rode home slowly, feeling the cool breeze on his face and the steady rhythm of the wheels beneath him, he knew that today would be remembered, not for the embarrassment, not for the insults, but for the courage he had shown and the lessons he had learned. The street was finally quiet, the sound of motorcycles fading into the distance. Liam rested his hands on the handlebars, breathing in the warm afternoon air, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. The tension, fear, and embarrassment that had weighed on him earlier were slowly melting away, replaced with something stronger: pride, courage, and the knowledge that he had faced something difficult and come out stronger on the other side. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he truly belonged in the space he occupied. He had been mocked, laughed at, and judged, yet he had remained steadfast. That alone was a victory. And now he had someone to thank for helping him understand that courage wasn't about fighting back or responding with anger. It was about standing tall in the face of adversity, believing in yourself and letting others know that mistreatment is not acceptable. Dwayne Johnson stayed with him for a few more minutes, talking quietly about resilience, kindness, and the importance of self-respect. "You know," he said with a smile, "life will throw challenges at you all the time. Sometimes people will try to put you down, make you feel small, or discourage you from pursuing what you love. But the key is to keep moving forward. You've done that today, and that's what counts. Liam nodded, listening intently. Each word seemed to sink into him, forming a new understanding he hadn't had before. He realized that the encounter wasn't just about one afternoon or one biker. It was about life itself, about learning how to face challenges, treat others with respect, and believe in oneself no matter what. As he reflected on the day, Liam remembered the way the biker had looked when Dwayne confronted him. The smirk had disappeared, replaced by hesitation and discomfort. It was clear the man had been forced to reflect on his actions, and that realization brought Liam a strange sense of satisfaction, not from revenge, but from seeing that the lesson had reached its mark. People could change if given the chance and the right guidance, and this had been proof. Walking beside him now, Dwayne encouraged Liam to think about what he had learned. "This is just the beginning," he said. "What happened today will stay with you, and you'll remember it whenever you face difficulties. The courage you showed is something you can carry with you everywhere, at school, with friends, in sports, or just in life. You'll keep growing stronger." Liam felt a small smile spread across his face. He thought about how far he had come in just a few hours, from being humiliated and scared to standing tall and feeling proud of himself. The change was more than external. It was inside him. A new confidence was forming, a belief that he could handle challenges and that he deserved to be treated with respect. Meanwhile, the biker had driven off slowly, still quiet and reflective. The earlier arrogance and loud laughter had vanished, replaced by a realization that actions have consequences and words carry weight. Even though he hadn't spoken much afterward, the change was evident in his posture, the way he held himself on the motorcycle, and the thoughtful expression on his face. He had been given a lesson he wouldn't forget, and perhaps for the first time in a long while, he felt the need to reconsider how he treated others. As Liam continued riding, he experimented with more tricks, feeling increasingly confident. Each successful attempt brought a rush of excitement and pride. What had once felt like a humiliating moment had transformed into something empowering. He had learned that perseverance and courage could overcome fear, and that standing up for yourself didn't always require confrontation. It could come from quiet strength, persistence, and support from someone who cared. Dwayne, watching him, felt a quiet sense of satisfaction as well. Helping someone realize their own courage and self-worth was always meaningful, but seeing it unfold in real time, with such genuine emotion, was even more rewarding. He knew that the impact of this afternoon would last much longer than anyone realized. Liam would remember this day, the lesson and the support he had received for the rest of his life. The neighborhood, which had been disrupted by the bikers' laughter and the commotion, slowly returned to its normal rhythm. People who had observed the situation spoke quietly among themselves, inspired by what they had seen. Some had witnessed the power of calm intervention, the importance of standing up for what is right, and the effect it could have not just on the victim, but on the person causing harm as well. Liam's parents, who had watched from a distance after noticing the commotion, finally approached him. Their faces were full of concern at first, but then shifted to pride and relief as they saw his confident smile. They hugged him tightly, reassuring him that he had handled the situation well and that they were proud of the courage he had shown. It was a small but deeply meaningful affirmation of his strength and resilience.